What are some examples of workloads free or very cheap when on demand, but on editions, they are actually more expensive? And the big one that really kind of surprised me that this customer was noticing that is the BigLake meta refreshes. So if you've used BigLake and all, which is essentially hits GCS and you have tables in maybe parquet format or in avro or maybe with CSV or JSON, they've got a schema attached to them. BigQuery has to do a refresh of that schema and load it back in. It's called BigLake metadata. When you do that, it actually uses slot hours. But if you go back in the information schema, it actually has a 0 bytes processed field on it. So it actually costs money on additions, but is free and on demand. So if you're doing anything like that, I would recommend creating that in, do all your big lakes in an on demand, like a refreshing, do it all in on demand project, and then read from it in an additions project. And the same goes for certain materialized views. This customer, he was doing that as well, that he was discovering that some of the materialized view refreshes were reading just like 500 or 600 kilobytes at a time on their refresh, from assuming from just an insert here or there. But on additions, it was billing him about $7 or $8 per run just because it was having to scan the data and check it and do a bunch of computations. So it was costing him a lot more money. He switched it to on demand. It was costing him fractions of a penny to run these same refreshes every day versus doing it 3, 4 times a day for $7, $8. Then it just came down to a couple cents. So just something to look into on there. If you're doing any sort of big lake metadata refreshes or materialized views, look at your costs. If you pull the information schema jobs from the jobs view, it will have the bytes process on there as well as your slot count, which is usually under the time milliseconds on how long it took. You take that, divide by the duration of your job in milliseconds. They'll tell you roughly the number of slots, and you can go from there to the slot hours. Look at your two costs, see if it makes sense to actually run them on additions or on demand. But these are two examples of just some really obscure use cases that might come in handy for other users and just to know about. And it's just something, these are the kind of tickets we got to do it where customers will try something and find something just really obscure that I don't even think the BigQuery team has thought about yet. And I sure hadn't until this came up and we discovered this is it for big like metadata refreshes, materialized view refreshes that is cheaper on demand versus additions. So just something to keep in mind.